Explosive minds tell you it's wrong. It's a game read along. So I thought I would read through an anti-gun article to get you equipped with the current arguments on the gun grabber side so you're better versed in it and can debate people in casual conversation with others because that's usually how you will win people over. And to also reveal some of the tricks they try to pull on people when they are propagandizing to their readers to convince them of something. So this is from the Los Angeles Times from a few days ago about how to win over voters on gun control. And essentially, they advocate that TV propaganda is the best way. And it starts out talking about how polls show that there's a vast majority of citizens supporting gun control. And this is the common thing you always see shown. But you will note, no sources are linked at all in this article. So they just make these claims. And of course, a lot of these polls are from anti-gun sources to begin with, or they're worded in such a way where it's trying to make it seem reasonable, more reasonable than it actually is, or what they're actually wanting to do. And they specifically talk about, banning assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, and the fact that it is not on the top of voters' priorities lists unless you're a gun addict, because you cannot just, value your freedom and rights as an individual or want to protect your rights under the Constitution. You have to be an addict to oppose these things. And they say gun addicts are single issue voters solely on the allegiance to unrestricted gun rights. I mean, unrestricted gun rights is a good way to get my vote, that's for sure. And that enables the gun lobby, a favorite word of the left, to wield extraordinary influence over members of Congress. Of course, the gun lobby, unlike some lobbies, is empowered by the people. It's not really the gun companies, it's people empowering organizations. And we'll mention the NRA, but more often now the GOA or FPC. So it's not that it's just this powerful, shady group. It's this group that has power because people care about the issue, which they never seem to understand. And then it calls America's national firearms restrictions, unlike California's, are pathetic. The problem for California is that we are vulnerable to weak laws in other states. Their residents can bring weapons into California that are illegal to sell here, or we can shop across the border. Now, shopping across the border is problematic in that usually gun shops won't sell to citizens of California solely because of this reason, but also they're certainly blaming everyone else. The places that have the strictest gun laws always blame everyone else because their laws aren't strict enough. And yes, guns will come in via the easiest route. So even if everyone had gun laws like California's, there would still be gun crime. Gun control would still not be effective because you're not going to stop firearms. And then they ask, how can voters be transformed from being impassive to insistent? The same way people were turned against tobacco, drunk driving, video ads. So, of course, they don't think that you believing your rights are important is the issue. They think everyone is a sheep who can be manipulated easily if you just talk in their ear enough via ads, which honestly, given the current climate and media control of and view of anti-gun, is probably pretty true. They reference, Friends Don't Let Friends Drive Drunk, Smokey the Bear, Rosie the Riveter, Loose Link Sink Ships, Yes, propaganda is highly effective. It's something we've known for a long time. That doesn't make it good, and the fact that you're advocating for propaganda against your own citizens' rights, not exactly a shining example of American liberty. So then they want TV ads asking to protect yourself from guns. It wouldn't need to be anti-gun per se, but of course it is. Everything they're saying is anti-gun, and everything they are advocating for is anti-gun. It could be about meaningful background checks, even though there are already background checks, using a red flag law to report a gun owner who's acting strangely and seems to pose a threat. So red flag laws are often a problem. Some politicians, even on the right, don't seem to get this, that, weapons can be temporarily confiscated, so you can be denied your rights and property without committing a crime, And depending on how the red flag law is listed, it can be a doctor, a coworker, anyone who has a grudge, or, if you're wanting to get revenge on someone, you can disarm them legally through the police. And also, just like how welfare checks often end up in police shooting the person who was trying to get checked on, gun confiscations already has led to deaths of gun owners who refuse to give up their firearms. It goes on. Show caskets and victims to visualize the evil of gun violence and display ugly assault rifles with their high capacity magazines. That's kind of, subjective. I think some assault rifles look pretty sleek. Again, the term assault rifles is usually meaningless, of course, raising the question in people's minds why these weapons of war are needed outside the military. And of course, this is something that gun owners and gun advocates get caught up in. It's really a trap of sorts because we will get into the semantics, because most of these are calling for the ban of AR 15s, which are not weapons of war, they are civilian versions of weapons. And that's irrelevant. The point we should be focusing on is that weapons of war should be legal under the Constitution. It doesn't matter that these aren't weapons of war they are trying to ban. We should have weapons of war, including full auto firearms, because that's what the Constitution said. That's what they had at the time. So weapons of war is kind of a little trick and trap because we get caught in these semantics that most people will not understand, when the proper position should be, yes, we should have weapons of war. Because the Second Amendment is not for hunting, it's for resisting oppression, and even if that oppression comes in the form of our current government. The narrator wouldn't need to ask the question. Viewers would ask themselves. Inform people that more Americans die from gunshots than in traffic accidents. And, so this is obviously kind of a trick. Once again, no source, but also this does not account for self-defense uses. This is something that they get into. So, if you have a self-defense shooting, if someone's trying to attack you or rob you or kill you and you kill them, this counts as, a gun death in this statistic. So it's not exactly parsing out justified homicides in self-defense versus, actual crimes that are committed. Ads like that can have a huge impact, like against drunk driving or seatbelts. Says someone from Brady, who campaigns against gun violence, who really campaigns against gun rights. States with the weakest gun laws are the same states with the highest rate of gun deaths. That's not an accident. Well, this is also, again, like I am saying, this is not parsing out justified homicides from actual murders and gun crime. And then they say, messaging about the dangers of firearms can be effective in changing people's attitudes about them. So yes, like they're saying, propaganda works. And this guy continues, one reason the NRA has been so successful over the last half century is it has consistently pushed the narrative that guns are effective tools for self-defense. The data suggests otherwise. Actually, you are in more danger if you have firearms in the home. And this is a little trick, a little bait and switch here, because he talks about the narrative that guns are effective tools for self-defense, which is true, and which gun control groups recently had the CDC remove from their gun violence data because they were pressuring them. So the thousands or even millions of self-defense use of firearms every year has been taken away at that. But this is completely different. Yes, it's effective for self-defense, and the being in more danger if you have firearms in the home is a completely different issue. That's usually, if you don't have it locked up properly and a kid gets it, that's one way. Suicide is another way. Also, just if a criminal comes in and steals your firearm, then yeah, that's more dangerous because that someone's going to go and commit crimes with it. So that's not relevant really to the initial point. So he switches in from one sentence to the next about what he's actually talking about, trying to dispel self-defense as an effective reason to have firearms. They continue, guns used in domestic violence, but if they did not have a gun, they would also use their fists, hammer, knife, kids shooting them, like I said, suicides. But, we have to be responsible gun owners as far as kids go, getting their hands on them. But also, people are going to kill themselves. They've always killed themselves, and that's just not going to stop even if firearms were all removed. And then it continues, so could a commitment to gun owners that the aim is not to seize all their firearms. That would be impossible anyway. That is really their ultimate aim and goal. A reader, Rich, emailed me. Most gun owners I know will support most of what Governor Gavin Newsom says the nation needs. What we all fear is that will never be enough. It is the never give an inch because they will take a mile philosophy. Banning high capacity magazines is probably the most reasonable start, the reader adds. Have Newsom come out and say, this is what we should do, and that will be the end. Then he can get some traction. First point, most of these articles will do this. They will find a sympathetic gun owner who is willing to trade their rights for safety and use it as an appeal to authority. But he has no authority because this guy's obviously an idiot. Because he's saying, oh, have the governor come out and say, this is it. This is the last thing we're going to take away. Which is, one, obviously not true. And two, you already have the nation's strictest gun laws. And now you're saying, oh, just one more. And that's it. It's like an abusive boyfriend. Like, oh, I'll never hit you again. That was the last time. They're obviously going to continue even if they pass their next measures. They just passed gun control last year. The ATF is banning pistol braces now or making them SBR only. And so there's never going to be an end. And that is why we cannot give them an inch, because it won't end until they have all the firearms outlawed, except for in the hands of the government and police. The gun lobby wouldn't agree, but they're hopeless. Yeah, of course. Gun control advocates should be targeting Rich and his sensible pals. I'm sure they already do, and that's why you have polls that do show some support for gun control, because there's always the FUDs and people like that who say, oh, I have a firearm, but I'd be willing to give it up or give it away. And then this article ends by talking to a Democratic consultant and TV political ad producer who basically says, who's going to pay for it? And the author laments, certainly not Congress when Republicans control the House. So yes, this person is not only advocating propaganda against gun rights, they're wanting the government to do it. But then they also get in the end, oh, you're going to have to get private dollars from somewhere. So what did they do? Turn to the billionaires who have collectively $4.7 trillion. And, they want to use that to invest in gun safety by, just making propaganda to manipulate people into giving away their rights. A classic tool of overreaching government, which a reporter is advocating for, which is, great. Independent news and everything. So I hope you thought this was kind of interesting, or maybe learned something or found it a little bit humorous. If there's enough interest, I'll do this again, because there's always articles like these and they never point to sources, or if they do have a link to when they are mentioning a report, it usually is to another article and not the report itself, because that's how these always go. But please like this video, comment down below if you have other articles you'd like me to read along, or if there's something else you thought I should point out or I was wrong about. Feel free to leave that below. Please don't forget to like the video, share it with others, and subscribe. I also have a Patreon, so you can support me there as well. Thanks for watching.